Scotland is said to be one of the most haunted countries in the world, and with our dark and sordid past, it is no wonder why. Edinburgh in particular has had many a ghost sighting, and there are many areas around the old city where people have seen different spectres. From Roman legionnaires walking the cobbled streets, to peasants huddled in corners, to grey ladies looking down on some of the most majestic sights. Welcome to the bi-weekly podcast that explores all that is myth, legend, and folklore in Scotland. Join me, Ryan, in discovering tales from Galloway to Shetland, and from the Hebrides to Peterhead. This is Finding Folklore. In today's tale, we're going to look at a story set around an abbey, Newbattle Abbey to be precise, just outside Edinburgh. The abbey was founded in the year 1140 by King David I and was home to a variety of monks for centuries. Until today, the abbey is now used as a college. The story also largely takes place at the Grange, an area inside the city of Edinburgh that was once on the outskirts. The Grange was originally farmland and has old buildings, one of which used to house many of the monks from the abbey. Our story takes place hundreds of years ago with a knight called Sir John Heron. Sir John Heron lived in the Gilmerton area of the city with his two daughters. His eldest daughter Margaret was a very pious girl, and weekly she would visit Newbattle Abbey to pray. Sir John always thought this was a good trait of Margaret's and commended it. He would even send servants to accompany her sometimes. And eventually, her weekly praying at the abbey became bi-weekly, and then 3 times a week, and it grew until it was almost daily. This wasn't an issue for Sir John until he looked to marry Margaret off. He arranged for a marriage to marry her into a family that would stand the family in good stead and allow them to climb up the ranks of Scottish nobility and aristocracy. But Margaret refused. John questioned why she had refused, but she gave no reason, simply that she could not marry a man she did not love. Well, Sir John Heron thought this was ludicrous, and told Margaret she would do as commanded. But she said if he tried to force her, she would flee the city. Sir John decided to send his servants out and to put out feelers, and to try and find why his daughter was acting in such a manner. And one day, a servant followed Margaret to Newbattle Abbey, where the servant witnessed the daughter kissing a monk. For the two, despite knowing it was wrong, and despite their best efforts, had slowly but surely fallen in love. When the news reached John Heron, he was raging. And with his rage, he beat the slave who broke the news to him. The slave would be hospitalized, but would make it through. Sir John Heron confronted his daughter Margaret and told her that this type of behaviour was unacceptable, and so he locked her in her room and told her she would only be allowed to leave it if accompanied by one of the servants under his orders. Days later, a servant came, warily, to Sir John Heron, and broke the news to Sir John that Margaret had been seen leaving the grounds on horseback. Again, Sir John Heron beat the servant in a rage. He gathered 2 more servants and gave chase, for he knew where Margaret must be headed, and so he went to Newbattle Abbey. When they arrived at the abbey, he marched across the grounds in search of his daughter, but could not find her. He searched every room and cursed and swore at every monk who came in his path. Eventually, finding no one, he grabbed the monk and threatened the man's life. The monk eventually told where his daughter and her monk lover were, at the Grange. And so Sir John Heron and his 2 servants made their way to the Grange, where they found the house the monk lived in and banged on the door. But there was no answer. They could hear movement inside and knew that they could be heard. And calling for his daughter, no one came. Calling for the monk, no one came. And calling for any who may keep the house, but still no one came. Sir John Heron banged harder and harder and tried to force his way into the house, but he could not. And in a rage, he grabbed a torch from one of his servants and set the building on blaze. Quickly the fire spread, and Sir John stepped back and watched, but no one left the building, and eventually no one could leave the building. Sir John heard the screams from inside, and eventually the building burned to the ground, and all who were inside it perished. It was later revealed that 10 people died in that blaze, 9 monks and Margaret Heron. After that, Sir John Heron fled the country to try and forgo execution that would surely follow. A friend of his and fellow knight pleaded his case and asked for him to be allowed to return and all charges to be dropped, for the monk had not acted in a monkly manner, and had in fact broke the rules. And had anyone answered, the tragedy would have been avoided. This argument was successful, and Sir John Heron was allowed to return to Scotland. But he had to drop his knighthood, and no longer was Sir. He also had to pay a large fine, but he was allowed to go on the rest of his life in his homeland. As for Margaret, she was spotted from that moment on as a Grey Lady at Newbattle Abbey. She can often be seen, even today, wandering the grounds of Newbattle Abbey, looking for the monk that was her lover, the monk who died centuries ago. And that is all from our story today. So let me know in the comments if you have ever been in Newbattle Abbey, or have you ever been to the Grange where the tragedy took place. Do you believe in ghosts? Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already, and join me for our next episode in 2 weeks' time. Until then, may the devil walk behind you. Bye for now.